A very good evening to everyone and welcome to another in the Sagicor series, Let's Talk. Welcome to this evening's topic of, are you underpensioned? We may as well say can we have enough pension? Is there even such a thing? We've got an incredible panel here this evening, and they're going to be delving in not only from their aspect, but from their personal experiences as well. I'm Gaynell Marshall, and it's my honor to be your moderator for this evening's session. So let me introduce you to what is going to be happening. We're going to have about a 45-minute, fairly in-depth and robust panel discussion with our guests, who I will introduce you to momentarily. And then we're going to leave about 15 minutes towards the end for any questions that you might have. So there is a feature for the question and answer. Feel free to shoot those questions in, even if we're not at the question and answer stage, because we know how it is. Sometimes you have a great question. It may or may not be answered throughout the course of the discussion, but you just want to put it in there just in case. Feel free to do that, and we will get to that towards the end of our discussion. Okay? So at this time, it gives me great pleasure to introduce this evening's panel. And this panel represents a cross-section of Sagicor expertise, independent subject matter on the, independent expertise on the subject matter is what I should say. And of course, as with all previous Let's Talk discussions, we've got some individuals who, just like me, just want to understand more and understand what we can do to bump up our pensions if need be. So let me first introduce Sagicor representatives, Ms. Donna Gibbs, Client Relations Manager with Sagicor Pensions Division, Mr. Roderick Nurse. We also have a Sagicor advisor who is extremely well-versed in this area this evening, so thank you, Roderick. Ms. Melinda Peter, you will know her as an independent financial consultant. She's also an author and a teacher, and she'll be providing us with that non-expert or layman perspective. And we also welcome entrepreneur Dario Greenwich. He is the founder and owner of the growing and popular Shine Automotive, Inc. Panelists, a very good evening to you once again, and thank you so much for taking time to be with us here this evening. So I'm going to start this evening's discussion of Are You Underpensioned by engaging Dario on this one, because as our quote unquote non-financial or pensions expert, we want to get your perspective on this particular question. So Dario, when you hear underpensioned, what is the thing that comes to mind to you, and why do you think this is a discussion worth having at this time?
Hi, good evening to all. When I hear the term underpensioned, what I really think about is someone not having enough resources, enough financial resources to be able to meet the obligations at the point of retirement. And I think it's interesting that we're having this conversation now, because a lot of people think that retirement might be something that they would plan for, at the latter stages or the evening of their life, but really and truly is a little more cost effective. And it yields a better return at the stage of retirement if you plan for it at an earlier stage. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that question.
Now, I know when you're talking about the evening of life, you're thinking, well, I'm getting to my 60s now, let's put things in place. But explain again for lay people what you mean by more cost effective to start doing it now.
Well, you see, as an entrepreneur, for me, I don't necessarily think that retirement is age specific. I think retirement should be based on when you get to a stage financially that you could literally not necessarily dedicate or rather you have a little more time versus trading your time for resources, or so for me, retirement is where I feel comfortable that my business, my investments have the potential to be able to give me or have the earning potential rather to be able to give me the derivatives needed to be able to sustain my lifestyle, with me being not necessarily directly involved in my operations on a daily basis, so giving me a little more freedom and stuff like that. So the evening of your life could vary depending on your setup in terms of your financial setup, of course, and ideally what you want to achieve and how your lifestyle. So for me, again, as an entrepreneur, I focus a lot on developing a business that has significant earning potential, and also having a structure that I could pretty much walk away or not necessarily be present every single day. I have to trade my time for money so I could have a little more freedom and the ability to be able to, as people say, YOLO, live, live your life, live your best life, So,
Yeah.
So that is basically what when I'm referring to the evening of your life, I'm referring to when I get to that stage of my existence where I literally think, all right, I definitely got enough investments. I got my business running a particular way, and it has the ability to be able to give me or to buy back some of my free time.
And I think that's a fantastic perspective to have, that you can be able to walk away from the day-to-day operations, the residuals, and the business will continue to do what it does, and it doesn't need your exchange of time for money. So at this stage, I want to bring in Melinda. How are you, Melinda? So clearly, I'm not the financial expert in this realm, but you have taken financial expertise, especially in our day-to-day decisions. You've taken that on almost like a mantra. So I would like to get your perspective on what that looks like, to know that I am saving enough, I am investing enough. Like, what does enough feel like?
Well, good evening, everyone. When I think of underpensioned, I'm thinking of having the resources to have a particular lifestyle at that particular stage. So you may not necessarily be working for a salary at that point. So how are you going to be able to sustain yourself at that period? How are you going to be able to still pay for your medical bills? I mean, by then you should be paying off your mortgage, hopefully, but how are you going to be able to still maintain that quality of life that you would have had while you had a salary? So it takes really intentional planning to ensure that you put financial systems in place. Whether you're thinking about having a business that could generate revenue for you, or you can have some other form of revenue, whether it's through investments or real estate or those different things. The point is that you want to be able to be earning in that time period, but not necessarily be working that hard. By that stage, ideally, you should have your money working for you, but it does take time to accumulate wealth in order to get to that stage. But if you're not well prepared, I'm often reminded of a story that I read with a lady who had her nephew come over to help her work in the yard. And then he went into the kitchen because he was hungry. So he looked in the cupboard and what he found was dog food. But he thought, well, my aunt doesn't have any pets. So then he inquired of her, why is there dog food? And she said, well, that's the only thing that I can afford to buy to eat. So you want to be able to still have some form of a quality of life. But if you're under pension, these things could occur.
So let's talk about the time, because it's one thing that none of us can really negotiate how much time. We have an average age, 65 being bandied about, sometimes 67, even 70, but other people can comfortably do it at 45 because they've been able to, I mean, a variety of things, generational wealth, they got lucky, they hit the lottery, or they made some really shrewd investments in some perhaps high risk things that paid off big and allowed for that kind of freedom. But I feel like I'm in a position where a lot of people are in a position where you think you don't have enough at the end of the month to kind of put down the kind of investments that we hear people talking about. Is that a fixation in our minds, a fallacy, or do we really have to set aside like a percentage of something to start working with?
Well, it depends on people's financial circumstances. And oftentimes when I work with some people, I would find that, too much of their income is tied up in debt. So in some instances, you may not be able to afford to save generally or to save for retirement because you're still in an indebted position. When I say indebted, you mean a lot of people. So it's just a matter of going through the process of making sure you pay off your debt so that you will have more income to do more. I think sometimes we think that we need more money. In some instances, that is required, right? Where your living expenses, your income is not able to meet those living expenses, but then there's some circumstances where you just have to buckle down and really look at where you're spending your money, because that's when it takes time for you to get to know your numbers just to see where your money is going. so that you can get a better understanding of how you can make better adjustments and better decisions with your money. But I often tell people that budgeting is a lifetime practice. It's something that we're going to be doing for the rest of our lives. But I don't think it is a fallacy. It's just a matter of putting that practice and system in place. But how else will you know if you have enough money, if you actually decide, you know what, I'm going to really look closely at my numbers and see how best I can make adjustments with my spending.
Thank you. So Roderick, as an advisor, this must feel like the talk sheet that you speak about every single day with potential clients who call and say, hey, Roderick, I wanna set up a retirement savings fund. I wanna do this, I wanna do that. Where am I gonna get this money, Roderick? Does anything that Melinda said sounds like it echoes basically what you have to tell your potential clients or existing?
Yeah, it does. And the younger you are, the easier it is for me to lend some assistance. If you are 25 years old, you know, I can start looking at things. If you are 50, then I tend to start with a prayer.
Wow.
You will definitely need that in hand. But yes, there are two things that I find that we need to, in terms of that question of being on the pension, it is how long will you live after 65? What will happen at 85, 90 years old? Are you preparing for that? What will that look like? And then, so that is a question of how long will the money last? So what you really want to be focusing on is income, because you will have expenses. So what you are experiencing today, you still have to be aware, how do I manage that going forward? Back then you will have, you know, you get 85, 90, you will have diminished abilities. Who, in terms of the family structure, how will you get help in that regard? And that then it can become quite scary. So apart from what you as an individual may be doing in terms of you're trying to look your savings, you're trying to cut back, you're making those sacrifices, there are other forces that you don't have any control over. What will be the state of our healthcare? Mm-hmm. Will we have to pay for healthcare services as we battle with how are we going to handle that? What will the support that we have in terms of national insurance, what will that look like? So these factors that seem to be out of your control are factors that must be taken into consideration. So on the pension, don't want to scare you, but probably is worse than you think. You know, so those are a few thoughts that I have that I'm conscious of. How do I get the client really looking at that? And then what solutions, once we get a good idea, then we can start to look at what possible solutions are there.
All right, thank you for your opening statement. Now, Donna, I understand that you engaged more with group pension clients, which means that pension plans are set up by companies to benefit their employees. And even though companies put such provisions in play, is it fair to say that individuals should still find other ways, or are they just overextending themselves? Should they really find other ways to make sure that they are pensionable?
Right. So the answer to that, indeed, thank you for the question, Gina, would be yes, indeed. They really should still, even though they have a company-sponsored pension plan, they really should still be looking to augment their pensions. And the reason for that mainly is that companies' pension plans do not aim to replace your salary, and they're really trying to add to the additional sources that you have. So it's not expected to be the end all and the be all of your retirement planning. So I have persons in a company's pension plan, and unfortunately, many of them don't pay sufficient attention. When they do reach retirement, they may get a surprise in terms of that pension that they're going home with. So I will usually urge persons that are in these pension plans to find out what is the projected retirement pension, the percentage of their salary at retirement that that pension plan is aiming to give them when they reach normal retirement age, so that they have that as part of their planning purposes. And again, now we're talking about being underpensioned. And the truth is, if you look at the FFC website, there are really only 253 registered pension plans in Barbados. And companies' pension plans are really a good vehicle through which to plan for retirement. So if we consider that number, which is really quite small, we can understand what we're talking about in terms of being underpensioned here in Barbados. So that's my beginning thoughts.
Okay, because I can imagine some people are just suddenly putting pen to paper and realizing, these numbers may not be adding up. I might be falling below. So let's talk an actual figure. So a person is making X amount a month. They know what they're making. They know what they save during the month. They know what they spend on food, utilities, et cetera, et cetera. There are other economic shocks that we just have no control over. The cost of living has just raised exponentially over the last 2-3 years, but they still have a general idea about what they're working with. Is 2/3 of what they're currently earning? Does that sound like a figure that could be, okay, that could work?
I personally like to say there's no one size fits all. So really, like Melinda was kind of saying, you have to know for yourself. So you have to kind of get in there. But generally, the 2/3 is one, especially when you're looking at companies' pension plans that they do look at. But I mean, you got to think about inflation, cost of living, and all this. So really, it really comes down to you have to put your hand to the plow and really get involved in looking at your own personal situations. So I guess people like Roderick, they'll probably tell you you want between 70% and, you know, that kind of thing, and perhaps even more, because especially in Barbados, if you're going to be retiring in Barbados, the cost of living is quite high. So, but at least you will have some ballpark. So it's not a bad figure, Gainell, but again, I kind of like people to kind of do their own numbers, do some own looking and seeing that.
All right, well, let's start with laying the foundation, because I feel like we've already started to roll a nice little pitch here. So let's get the ball rolling with certain things. Now, I know that the argument is we need to know for ourselves. Certainly. I mean, I have visions for myself when I'm older. I don't know if the money's going to add up, but I have visions for myself. Other people have a far simpler outlook. So that's, I guess, what you call knowing what you want for yourself. But Dario, because you had started the ball rolling, and I liked how you put it, you just want to be able to walk away from the day-to-day operations of the business and not have to be in there exchanging time for money, and let the business work for you without you having to put your hand to the plow like that. What is your vision for financial accumulation and security? And also, what are you looking for in terms of potential future earnings? Like, what does that look like for you as an entrepreneur?
For me as an entrepreneur, I actually love the concept of building businesses. So for me, I love to be able to start something, build it, and you take it to where ultimately you dream of it being one day. And there's something very inspirational about building a company, not only for myself, but something that, whether it be my team, whether it be my customers, that the public generally could be a part of. And could be in the shape of an IP or something to that degree. So being able to build a business that is bigger than myself, that not only provides opportunity for myself and my team, but certainly provides even an investment opportunity for others as well, something that I am very much invested in, to use the term again. So for me, I want to be able to build my business or build my businesses and build a portfolio ultimately that has the earning potential, as I said earlier, to kind of, so that my focus is not necessarily in the day-to-day operation, and you build a team that could kind of help you manage that. But my focus is really in terms of being able, from a strategic level, in terms of building out the company, in terms of looking at the vision, in terms of adding value to the customer experience, adding value to the islands and to the Caribbean holistically, and with the ultimate goal of not necessarily, or rather having multiple streams feeding in. And obviously, as an entrepreneur, the only way you make money is when the company is profitable. And then obviously for me is taking those profits and making sure that those profits, well, the ones that come to me at least, are enough to substantiate, my modest standard of living at this time, certainly. And after I decide to, to not be involved on a daily basis. But I don't think I would ever stop working per se, because I
Right.
love entrepreneurship. I love what I do. But certainly I want to be in a position where I literally pass the baton on to, whether it be my team, whether it be, my shareholders, whatever the case may be, and sit from a more strategic level where I could give back a little more to the community and give back a little bit more to the business that has done for me. And at the same time, as I said, maintain a certain standard of living.
And a lot of what you're saying, it speaks to the quality of your life and not always the numerical quantity of what it's going to take for you to finance that life, which I think is also an incredible thing. Sometimes we have to think about what are the things that bring us joy or bring us meaning in our lives as well. It's not always tangible. But you spoke about the multiple streams of income. So I want to bring back Melinda where this is concerned. And I know you are a stickler for making budgeting a part of your lifestyle. It's not this one thing that you do for this one time, but it really is a practice lifelong in whatever you do. So what is your view on, let's say, not only multiple streams of income, but multiple forms of investment? Like, how many different streams do we have to have going for us, especially in a day and age like this, where I just feel like it's expensive to just depend on one or two things?
Yes, it is expensive in these days because due to differing factors and price increases. What I've recognized for myself personally, and through having conversations with people, you just can't necessarily rely on one source of income. I often tell people, first of all, not every single hobby is a business idea. So you do need a creative outlet so that you can, relax. And that's where the creativity comes, all right? But then in terms of having more than one income stream, you're probably wondering, what can I do to earn additional income? I often tell people your natural abilities are what earn you income. If I could speak for myself personally, yes, I teach, I speak. There's a difference, of course. Although they do sound the same, but teaching is, doing one-on-one with people or teaching a group. Speaking is what I'm doing right now. And then in terms of, I have the ability to write. So I've written books as well. I'm an author. So I have different skills which I use in order to earn me income. So if you can take a look at your natural abilities, what people know you for, is there a solution that you could provide that could earn income for you? Outside of my business, also, I teach accounts on the site. I do tutoring as well. So there may be something that you could do on the site that's not so hard. It could be accounts, it could be math tutoring. It could be that you're great at braiding hair. It could be that you're good at baking cakes. It could be that you're good at creating seasonings. It could be that you're good at taking care of children. All those different things could earn you income. So I think often people feel intimidated or thinking that, they should have the education to do this, but there are many people who are billionaires and millionaires who didn't really have a degree. They just decided, you know what, I have this idea, I have this solution. They started in the garage, they started wherever, they started in their bedroom, and these are now multi-million-dollar operations, because you never know, that solution that you have on the inside could be what somebody is looking for. So of course I do advocate, you should have more than one stream of income. I'm not going to scare people and tell people have 10 streams of income, because you still want to be able to maintain that and manage that, because even like dealing with your personal finances, especially dealing with side hustles, you still need to manage those resources as well. Manage it well, in that you're putting the money back into the company and you're causing it to grow. So let's say, for example, you're selling a pen. You're selling a pen that is marked and engraved with some sentiment, and you bought it for $2, but you sell it for $5. What you're looking to do is to maintain the $2 so that you can purchase more. So I do advocate for that, having more than one stream of income, and those things are immediate, where you're looking to set up something, a business, a family business on the side that could earn you additional income. But then in terms of investing, like in real estate and having an investment portfolio, that takes time and patience. So it's a mixture. You can deal with the short term right now, and then you could also deal with the long term as well. But those can I say a spectrum, are all necessary. So I would advocate for more than one stream of income.
Now, Roderick, I'm going to come to you because there was something that Melinda said earlier that struck me. And sometimes it's not that we need more money, but we need to know what we're doing with the money we have. So let's say, for instance, I magically have these 7 streams of income, but I'm a person that I just don't know what to do with the money when I get it. I've just made $5,000. I literally don't know what to do with it. And then I don't realize that I have, paid bills that should have been managed with another stream of income, and I put money aside for something that it should have been put aside for. And every time I look around, I seem not to have money in order to invest or to bump up my pension. What can you advise people about how to look at the money that they currently earn and what relationship they should have with it?
That is a good question. There are a couple of things in that, and you find it, people that are working for a comfortable salary, and if I'm talking comfortable salary, I'm talking over $8,000 a month. It's comfortable. If you're less than that, you will find a little bit of stress in this country right now. You find that they spend freely. So there are things that a person will go in the supermarket, you don't know what your prices are like, you can take the trip because you have a resource there. But you find that even at that level, the person may not be managing the resource well. And the belief sometimes is that that resource will continue there. And very often, if that flow is interrupted, then you get a whole lot more regret. So the idea is you manage the resources as much as you can. And that is what Melinda was talking about, in that you are setting up a structure by which you want to be constantly managing the business. Dario, and I totally embrace his sentiments. If in a lot of cases, the entrepreneur is best positioned to deal with retirement because there is no real limit on the earning, but it does require a different way of thinking. So planning for the entrepreneur is different from planning for the person that is working in a standard job. There are some people that will not leave their standard job to take on entrepreneurship. They're just scared. I mean, we are not all built the same way to do that. And when we talk about, and we have to play to our strength. So Melinda was talking about the different sources of income. I like to look at it like manage the resource that you have. Some of us have children, and not that the children are retirement plans, but sometimes your greatest liability can be that child that is not responsible. Like I often say, if you fail to create a responsible child, you'll be responsible for that child well into adulthood.
Wow.
So imagine that you have limited money. You've got to look after the child because the child not working, he didn't do too good in school even when I had opportunity. That child goes up there and gets somebody's pregnant. Now, all of a sudden, you are taking on a grandchild as well. So you made the sacrifice to put your child through school you were spending. And now you've got to put additional money out there to look after grandchildren because you feel that bond. And sometimes you feel guilty that you didn't put in enough. So there's social risks that can impact the finances that you also have to look at. How am I managing that? So one of the things we want to make sure is that we don't go too far in terms of the pursuit of money and not manage the other resources.
Right.
Gaynell, if I may, because Melinda is talking about investments and having those additional streams, and because again, with my interactions with companies' pension plans, even though companies sometimes have these pension plans, employees are not on them because they don't want to invest in their retirement future. And usually it might be the younger persons because they think they have all this time, so it's back of mind. So this is just to say, this is an excellent way. And the way to see it is to see it as an investment, that you're actually putting money there. You're not just putting it out because they just see it as going away from them, coming out of their salary when they could be doing something else. So the mindset, we would want to encourage them to see is that it's an investment. And usually companies are also putting monies in that plan. So really you're getting that benefit as well. So you don't want to lose out on that part either.
And in the event that you happen to work for one of the companies that does not have an investment plan, because you spoke, I think it was you who spoke about only 293 registered companies. We have many more companies in Barbados than 293, right? So you're probably working for a company that does not have a pension plan. Where does that leave that person that says, hey, I at least want to start putting away something? How do I start doing that and still maintain my today obligations? Because I believe that's what a lot of people battle with, that I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I know what I'm battling with today, and they feel the need to focus on, love, let me just get through today and we'll see about tomorrow. And then 10 years have passed.
Yep, that certainly does happen. And I remember I got married very young and I had my children very young. And I remember that at the end of every month, we used to practically have nothing left from our salaries. And that bugged me, because obviously when you're young, the salary is very tiny because I'm pretty old. And so these monies are small. So you're saying to yourself, I remember saying to my husband, I want an account, because we had a joint account. I just want an account where monies can sit. And we just started putting little monies in there. And let me tell you, the things we were able to do with that. And we did not have additional monies. So it's a matter of understanding you have these limited resources and you have to know what it is you want to do with it. So it comes back down to that prioritizing and really budgeting and looking and see what's coming in. Because you may not be able to immediately add to the income. So you want to be able to say, okay, this is one plan that I have for retirement. So I'm going to put in a little bit, and we'll probably talk about that, I imagine, later. But it starts with what you have.
And it's interesting that you make that point about you having children younger, because I practically grew up with retired parents. They had me much later in life. So they were retired by the time I was 14. So I knew what it was to live with retired parents. And I don't know why, and I still feel so, I don't know why, but I feel like they had access to so much more than I do now, even though I know I must have out-earned them. I just feel like what I'm earning is going so many different directions. And they always seemed so laser focused, but I remembered going on vacations, going to summer camp, going to school trips, you know, getting your hair. I remember living quite well. And they were pensioners. And I'm thinking, oftentimes I'm like this. I'm having a home alone moment, like, what am I doing wrong? Like, what am I doing?
They're probably more focused. So they knew exactly what they were about. And that's why it's no one size fits all, because some people have the grandiose plans and some don't. So it will depend. But I still think it has a lot to do with priorities and saying, this is what I want to happen, and really zeroing in on making it happen.
Well, I can tell you, that was definitely the two of them for sure. And they always planned, and they always were laser focused while living. You know, they didn't give up on living, but they were relatively sure about what they wanted. So the real question is, how do we engage a younger demographic? We are at the crux of a crop over festival, and I know you're trying to tell somebody to take their good frontline money and start putting down for a pension, and they're looking at you like, really? How do you engage a younger demographic to have that futuristic conversation and make it make sense? Anyone can take this.
Well, all right, you go ahead, Dario.
I might be the youngest in the room, so that's why I decided to take this one. You know, it's interesting because I think Sagicor actually is perfectly positioned to be able to grab the attention of young people and to really build the investment culture or stimulate the investment culture in Barbados. And I remember years ago, I had this grand idea. I had designed this plan where, you know, and I had pitched it to Sagicor as well at the time, where Sagicor would create an investment tool that provides emerging businesses with the opportunity to get capital from this pool, but the public actually invest directly into the pool, giving the public direct shares into these companies are definitive for the individuals, and also look at young people, is that a lot of young people, because we're so conscious, we're so woke, we tend to, we won't be able to see, or we want to be able to know where our investment is going. And if it's going in a company that we are familiar with, a company that we patronize and stuff like that, it gives us more incentive to invest. And I think when I talk to my peers and when I speak to younger persons, especially, they're very much willing to invest because they have some disposable income. But the challenge is that they don't believe that the investment vehicles that are available are necessarily tailored towards them. And it's not a case where they might not be interested in the mutual funds or an endowment or a pension plan or something. It's just that they think, because they look at the mechanics of it, they may think, you know what, this doesn't benefit the people that are in my space, whether it be businesses or the other individuals. So I think Sagicor is perfectly placed now, especially because of the scope that you have with the digital bank, and obviously with the insurance company as well, is perfectly positioned to be able to dominate in this space by creating products that are appealing to young people, and at the same time has a certain level of social responsibility. Because imagine businesses being able to develop out there and say, look, the reason why I was able to open 10 other locations is because of this opportunity from Sagicor. And then the businesses then have the obligation almost to then set up their own pension plans for their staff with Sagicor as well. So it's kind of a win-win situation. And I think those kind of ecosystems would lead to certainly more interest on behalf of the young people. Certainly as an entrepreneur, I would be definitely interested in a conversation like that. And I think it would overall change the investment culture and certainly make a huge significant impact on how we as young people, how we look at pension, how we look at retirement, how we look at investment. And as Roger said earlier, a parent with a responsible child almost has less burden than a parent with a responsible child. So if we have young people that are thinking about the future, are thinking about investment, then they themselves they might actually be able to look after their parents. If the parents have a shortfall at the age of retirement, they may actually be able to retire their parents in some cases, and I think that is really the conversation, and that's really where we got to be at this stage, because we've seen how it works, and outside of Barbados and international countries. So I do believe that we have a special opportunity here in Barbados and the Caribbean for things like that, to get young people excited about investment, about pensions, about retirement.
And that's straight out of the demographics mouth, Roderick. Does that help your presentation any in terms of speaking to people and getting them to understand what needs to be done, or what they really should be looking at when it comes to shoring up their reserves to make sure they have enough?
I want to go back and let me answer that in light of what you asked initially. 20 to 25 years old at this time, with Propov in the air and everything, money will spend. I can't talk, but reality is that when a person starts to get a little older and they start to get in the 30s and 40s is where you tend to settle down a little bit more in terms of, you start to have a different focus, you have family to take on responsibility. But there are some young people out there that are really focused. I got a 25-year-old came to me, he want to get a mortgage. And I was surprised as a 25-year-old male that want to get a mortgage. So he got the mortgage and he built the house and he came back, and I talked to get a second mortgage on the house, because what he did is he completed the upstairs, rented it out. He's doing the bottom because he still lives at home. You see? So already his mind, his direction is a completely different focus, right, away from the average person who wants to party. But if you have a child that wants to party and you still have some sense of control and you're living in my house, then you pay rent. Because I still got to find a way to you reserve some money. You pay rent. Right. So you can, so there are systems that you don't have to put in place for some children who are responsible enough. And then there are others that you put in place to assist the person to save. But that money, that the rental income, is then what you give to that child later in life to help towards the first home or what. So you're doing that with them. And as Daria was saying, Sagicor Bank, lots of young people, very dynamic. And I found that, young people attract young people. I am more Donna's age. So we deal with the older folks, But that's Sagicor Bank, and we got a whole set of young people there. is really exciting in terms of the focus of the company.
Yeah, you have some support here, Roderick, in the chat. I can see that because whereas I was never made to pay rent, it was very clear that, you know, lights and water cost something. So it was just initiating the responsibility, instilling it in you very early, and you appreciating that things cost things. Do you have enough for these things to take you through? And will I struggle to pay for any of those things as I get older, when the income streams start to diminish and the demand starts to diminish and your earnings really start to diminish? So yeah, we do have to talk about this from a demographic point of view. The truth is when you're in your 20s, you feel like you're going to live forever, and you feel like the money is going to just be flowing forever. And the plan that you're on is the plan that will take you into forever. So we've had the globe really some shocks that we never could have anticipated, a whole pandemic. Then we had a volcano and a hurricane. Well, we just had a whole set of grief, so to speak. And I feel like it has somehow made advisors' jobs maybe a little bit more challenging, because the rhetoric that I was hearing is, you put aside and look what happened. You save and look what happened. You did and look what happened, because there were so many things that we could not control. How do we change that mindset back into an opportunity and not a threat?
We've had some very difficult times, without doubt. And the concern I have had is that, you know, coming through the COVID, coming through even the increase in the cost of living, that the savings were spent down. So retirement is going to be a much greater challenge coming up there. One of the issues that you face now, but even increasing cost of housing. So this is one really where you really have to manage expectations. You've got to learn, how can I do more with less? You've got to look at, how do I manage debt? So it does call for a reorientation when it comes to thinking. But I do believe that as the economy improves, that we can get out of it. So Sagicor, they do have some products that I find helpful. So if I'm advising a person coming in now, I don't necessarily have to say there are products that I can use. I can try to get $1 to do a number of things. Because if I can get $1 spent to cover an insurance need, to create a savings, and still later then you can use that for insurance, I'm able then to free up more money when it comes to planning and helping clients. So it does call for us, the advisor, to become a little more creative. So,
all right, now I'm going to ask you to get super creative, both you and Donna, because hand to heart, approaching 50 with swiftness. And if I want to add to my portfolio, I know how this works. Was she a little close to the finishing line the way she started? So what options are there still available for people like me who just want to continue to build on and add onto the portfolio to try to like cushion that gap that we all would have experienced through COVID, through a war in Ukraine, and things that we just had nothing to do with. We just had to ride the tide.
Do we pray first, or I just go straight?
We pray first, second, and third. Roger, we are going to pray. And once we have prayed, now we'd like some information.
At 50 years old, then you look at how do you bring down, how do you manage your debt? So that is one of the things you want to focus on. But let's look at opportunities as well. There are still mutual funds that you can look at. You may look towards the preferred income fund. What I do find, and that the market is opening up. Sagicor Asset Management, now you can actually look at having shares on the international market with the US account. So more opportunity is opening up for saving, for investment opportunities with the mutual funds, with the asset management, and also to when it comes to the products. In terms of the life insurance product, has become, the cost is down because the Sagicor have restructured the payment. So in the past, where you might find that you've got a term plan or a whole life plan, you can get a nice policy that can still look after family going forward. So at 50 years old, there's still opportunity in terms of the product offering. And that is one of the things that I really admire, in terms that even as an advisor, there are suites of products and tools that I can use to help help my clients.
Mhm.
So 50 is not too old.
Yes.
It is not
So
too
you
old.
talked about managing the debt. And then if you could then, once you've kind of, if you have big ones and stuff and not trying to get rid, because Melinda kind of went that route as well in mentioning that. And once you've done that, then again, it comes back to being focused. If you could find those monies and kind of deploy them doing something that, like Dario is saying, that will work for you and not you having to work from it. And I must say that it goes back as well as what Melinda is saying. You look at what you can do, what talents and skills you have, and what can you do with those to help increase that income. Even some of us, like Roderick would say, are stuck with our 8 to 5s or whatever they are, but there may be other opportunities for you to use those skills somewhere else in another way that can help build your income stream. So you're also looking back into the future to say, okay, so I may retire from doing this, but I could still use it in a different way.
Right.
Because people like you will probably be working, not because you have to, but because you want to, you have that energy and that youthful thing, that you could go on. So,
Donna, please stop the blushing.
so there may be those who would want to do that.
Yes.
But let's look at even opportunities, even with Sagicor Bank, with lower interest rate. Sometimes if you're carrying debt, this is a good time for consolidation.
Right.
So I tend to advise people, consolidate the debt when you are strong, not when you are struggling and weak. So this is a time you can free up money. You can actually create money to save by doing the debt consolidation and having money coming in at a lower interest rate. So there are a number of things that we can do.
So I think what this is all talking about, though, is financial literacy. I find that a lot of us are admittedly just not aware of what opportunities are available, because what you say, of course, makes absolute sense. Securing a consolidation loan allows you to make one payment to address all of your outstanding debt once you don't go and incur more debt. And you do that when you're strong. You don't do that when you are fragile and your debt to service ratio is through the roof and no one can help you, right? You want to do that when you're strong and you want to start working on, your debts first. I don't know what you all have in terms of a theory. Do you start with the big ones first, or do you start to chip away at the small ones and call that a milestone and go for the next one? Melinda, chip in anytime now. Like how does that work in our minds?
I was about to chip in, actually. So the school of thought is to start with the smallest amount first. What that does is that it gives you momentum. So if the smallest amount is 500, you pay that off, and then you place the money into the next step. The theory is called the debt snowball. So what you're doing is that you're servicing all of your debt still. You're not just focusing on one and not servicing the others. What you're doing is you're servicing all of the debts. Also, what you're doing is that you're paying more than a minimum amount due. Because if you just pay the minimum amount, what happens is that they're taking the interest off and then placing the remainder. What this does is that when you pay the minimum amount due, is that you're stuck within the payment cycle that you signed off on. So if you decide that you can afford to put $20 more or $50 more, if you can handle double the payment, if your budget allows you to, then you can do that. So when you pay off debt number one, what you're doing is that you're taking the money from debt number one and putting it to debt number two. And then when you finish paying off debt number two, then you put the money from debt number two to debt number three. So it is a process. Back to the debt consolidation, yes, that lending institutions tend to prefer that you're actually working for a salary in order to give you that option. So if you are paying debts of $1,500 right now, then you can then when you do the debt consolidation, what happens is that it could go down to $1,000. I'm just calling a figure. I'm not saying that's what actually happens, but then you have $500 available. So what are you going to do with the $500 that you have? Is it that you are going to pay off other debts? Is it that you're going to build back up an emergency fund? Is it that you're going to do more things, accomplish more financial goals? But it should be that when you are strong financially, in order to consider debt consolidation. And another thing is that I think people think that when you're in debt, you can't actually start saving as well too, but you can. You can also decide, you know what, I'm going to save a particular amount of money by the end of the year. Okay, so you can give yourself that goal that's realistic for you. But what you can do is that you could start saving like 25 cents, 10 cents, 5 cents, the $2 bills, the $5 bills. It's just about creating that habit while you are recovering financially, so that by the time that you have rid that debt, you're already in the habit. It's not that difficult for you to take that money that you know have and actually put it aside. So it's a recovery process.
I always say I have to have a plan for my money, or trust me, my money can have a plan for me. So it just has plans that I'm not, on board with all the time. So I have to have an assignment for it, or else we're going to have a real big problem. So I'm going to check our question and answers now. They've been coming in pretty steadily. And this one is coming in from Roger, who says, I have a pension with Sagicor. I'm 45 now. Can you have more than one pension plan? And can I have another one at my age?
The answer is yes, 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 you can. It's probably a good idea too, because it's better to have more than, not all your eggs in one basket. So that's good. So the answer is yes.
So you'll be getting a call from Roger tomorrow, Donna. Roger. Okay, great. We have another one here. This one is from Carcine, who says, what is an insurance endowment plan? And how can such assist me as I plan my income for retirement? Is this a good pension instrument? And that's the first question. The second part has to do with age, but I'll let Roderick or Donna answer the first question first. So first, what is an endowment plan? And how can such assist me as I plan my income for retirement? Is this a good instrument?
Yeah, the endowment plan is a life insurance plan, but it is designed for targeted savings. So you may want to have $250,000 at age 65 or age 60 or age 70. And that allows you then, and you will know how much money in terms of premium you will pay. So the nice thing about using the endowment plan as a retirement instrument is that it allows me to know how much money I'm targeting, as opposed to, say, a pension that is dependent upon how the interest rates grow. And I am not always sure at 65 how much money will be there if I'm using a pension instrument because of the nature of the instrument. But the endowment now allows me to target that. Now, the other side of the endowment is if I have responsibility and I die too soon, then that money is still there to look after the family. So this is one of the times when I mentioned that I'm using $1 to cover a number of needs. I can look at my retirement money as a lump sum, and I can still protect my family. So that is a value of the product. You had a second question in there as well?
Yeah,
on that one?
Yes, on this one. What Carcine wanted to know is, what is the latest age by which I should have an endowment plan in place? What factors should I consider when considering life insurance or endowment?
I should know because I do it every day. But it is one of the things that elude me a little bit. I think the cutoff age is 55. I know the endowment plan, you can have a 15-year endowment, a 25-year endowment. You can have an endowment that will mature at age 60, at age 65 and age 70. So those are the endowments in terms of the Sagicor series that we will have. But I think the latest age would be age 55 at which you can buy the endowment. But that I would have to just double check on that one.
Okay, all right. Hopefully, Carcine, you are still within that age bracket where you can secure that. We're going to go to Ryan, who says, I am in a company pension plan as well as my own private plan. At retirement, do I get my 3 full pensions, including NIS if it still exists, or is there some kind of merging that limits the amount I will get?
No, he will have 3 checks coming to him. So that sounds like a good deal.
Get it, Ryan. Fit in a 4th if you can, because now I'm officially afraid for all of us. We also have Peggy C, who says, are there any avenues that can be suggested in which we can, and she puts safely in air quotes, so I'm also going to do it, safely invest. I think I know what she means by that. A lot of us would like to invest, but we don't know where to invest. Give us a little more, or rather to invest, to give us a little more at retirement. Apart from, say, boss bonds, what can we invest in? I know that Melinda had mentioned some avenues earlier. Do you want to repeat that for Peggy?
I can certainly do that. Invest in yourself so that you can earn more income or learn a new skill. You can also invest in a side business where you can generate family business and you can earn income from that. Then also you can look into real estate as well, where you're purchasing investment property. So you're actually receiving rental income for that. And then also having a balanced portfolio, investment portfolio, where there's stocks, where there's shares, and mutual funds as well too. They're considered safe as well. Obviously, the younger you are, 40 and 50, you cannot take such great risk. I wouldn't recommend crypto. I wouldn't recommend Bitcoin, okay, at that age, because you can't afford to eat up the cash flow that you have. You can't afford to lose it all. Those are the safe options that you can consider.
All right. We're going to move on to Hyacinth, who says, I have a pension with Sagicor, which I started when I was 50. I'm now 63. Is it too late for me to increase it now, as it's supposed to come to an end when I'm 65? Roderick, this sounds like a you question. Or maybe Donna. Donna, you can answer that as well, perhaps. Yeah, Roderick?
Yeah, you can add more, you can inject more funds into the pension because it is a savings instrument. Right. And in one sense, Hudson is correct in the sense that because the interest rates are low now across the board, it will not have all of that. It will not grow as much, but the money still will be there in terms of savings. So it's still a good idea to put some more in there.
All right, Hyacinth, go for it. We have a question here from T Knight. What is the difference between a registered and an unregistered pension plan?
I can take that one.
Thank you.
Let's deal with the pension plan first. But let's deal with the unregistered pension plan. That is a plan that you will set up. It is really where you're setting aside money dedicated for your retirement at a particular age. So it is a long-term savings instrument. That is what you're looking at. And you will get a fix. You will get a higher interest than, say, the normal savings rate. What then happened as an incentive for people saving is where then the government got involved and you had the plan being registered. What government did in that instance is allow money before you were taxed. That money then went straight into that fund. And you were not only saving, but you were delaying the tax burden, as it were. So what would normally happen is that you would pay money in, and that is where you can then recover it from when you file the income tax. And that is what had happened with the registered plan. So that will be the difference. One is registered with government to allow a tax saving, and the other one is not, is your choice. Both will work. This is where the difference comes. If you want to take money out of the registered plan, then you have to repay some of the taxes. The incentives were there that at a particular age you were going to get a percentage tax-free, and if you leave the other monies in, then you don't have to pay any taxes. So that became a way to fund your retirement. And the government, let's say the government assisted with that by allowing you to do that with, say, tax-free dollars in that regard.
Okay, that answers your question. I hope so too. And Tanisha, I feel you, and I feel like we're going to be on this particular question for a long time because there are known factors and there are unknown factors. But Tanisha's question is, how do we estimate the amount of money we will need for our retirement in Barbados?
I guess I can say something to answer that question. I often tell people, picture yourself debt-free, right? Because by then you should know what your monthly expenses are, okay? So you list your monthly expenses, less the debt, because like I said, by then you should be clear of that. And then you multiply that by 12 to get your annual figure. And then it depends on the genetics. It depends on how long your family lives after that particular age. So then you can estimate, well, you recognize that, well, my family lives like 20 years longer or 25 years longer, sorry. So then you multiply that annual figure by that number of years. So you could estimate how much money like that. I think basically you could think about it with that regard in terms of determining how much money you would need to retire.
Yeah. I think it's always going to come back to one of those things where you have to know what you want for yourself, what your life is going to look like. If you're going to live off the grid, I suspect you're okay. Go ahead for it. Go for it. But if you plan to live a life that involves, you know, travel experiences, dining out, you know, maybe even taking on new hobbies or what have you, then it's going to take some money. And the one thing we can't predict really is how long we have. So I really don't think that we can put that on the table and say, well, you know, go for the old biblical 70. We just don't know. So I think what we should go logically for are the things that we wish to have for ourselves. Dario has a very clear picture. I think many of us have a very clear picture of what we want our golden years to look like after we are no longer required. And I think that's the operative word, required to go out and earn a living to satisfy these needs. So, you know, bringing down our debt as much as possible. If those of us who still have existing mortgages, we want to be all but done with those, hopefully before retirement, let alone at retirement. If it's a new car situation, look, buy a secondhand one that'll take you to the supermarket and back, or whatever the case may be, and try to really just minimize those things that require you to constantly be putting out money, as opposed to just living off of the money that you've already spent your working years accumulating. Have I learned anything?
So Gaynell, you said that you believe that people have a very clear picture of what they want to do in retirement. I'm not absolutely sure. I think people have a vague kind of a
big idea. Maybe it's just
which is why it goes back to having to put that pen to the paper so that it starts to make numbers sense.
Yeah.
So yeah. Then you will really be able to have a really clear picture, because then it starts to get realistic using what Melinda said. Yeah,
absolutely. So let's get our final takeaways from this evening's gathering, especially from our panelists. I'm going to start once again with Dario. Dario is an entrepreneur. He plans to be an entrepreneur. He loves to be an entrepreneur. He loves to be a young investor. This is what we've learned about him in a very short space of time. But what would your takeaway be for our audience from today's question of, are you underpensioned? I think you're still muted, Dario.
Yeah, I needed to unmute it, right? Yeah, this event was certainly enlightening for me. Roderick and Donna shed some light on some very critical things as it relates to the Sagicor series, and the fact that Sagicor has a pretty decent suite of opportunities for insurance, and certainly for retirement and for the age of pension. Belinda, obviously, a couple of things she spoke about today highlighted things that I already know, especially as it relates to, you know, reducing your personal debt. As an entrepreneur, you might always have some level of corporate debt, but on the personal level, certainly being able to reduce that and save while you're doing it is certainly critical. And I think overall, as I said in the opening, you know, we all, and Donna said this earlier as well, everybody's pretty much responsible for what retirement looks like for them. I think what we need to do as a collective is make sure that there are opportunities and there are options for every single person who will get to the stage of retirement, or who wants to retire at whatever stage. And I think, you know, this conversation and conversations like these in the future will certainly be able to breed such ideas. And I would like to part by saying, you know, I'm an optimist, and I hope that at some stage, you know, I live in a space where a company like Sagicor entertains the idea of things outside of, you know, the traditional mutual funds, the traditional options for investment, and certainly provides the platform, and it can be through crowdfunding, it can be through whatever means, to give the young people an essential opportunity to invest and to prepare for retirement, and ultimately to be the company that has been able to change the status quo in Barbados and the Caribbean. And that is certainly a day that I look forward to existing within.
Thank you, Dario. Melinda.
Thank you, Gaynell. I often say that financial planning is dynamic and that there are varying life stages that you have to plan for. Not every year, not every decade is going to be the same, but you should still have a plan. Before, I used to think that you had to live to work, but you have to work to live, to have a life, because you're supposed to enjoy a little bit of what you work for, because we're not just working just to pay bills and on all those different things, okay? Because at the end, leading up to retirement, what you want to do is to enjoy yourself and kind of do those things that you weren't able to do while having particular responsibilities, children, marriage, and all those different things. So when you're an empty nester, what it is that you do, how do you secure yourself financially? Because it's important to leave a debt-free legacy so that, you know, should you go away for a very, very long time, meaning you pass away, there's some form of estate planning, and retirement planning is a form of estate planning because you want to ensure that the next generation is covered, that they're not going into any debt that you're leaving behind, but it's going to take discipline, it's going to take time, and it's really going to take an effort on you to really get to know your numbers, to understand yourself, to break the cycle so that you can have the quality life that you want. And especially for the younger ones, I think it's a matter of mindset and also some form of financial peer pressure, because not at that age, and I can identify with that, at that age, I wasn't really thinking straight. I thought the credit union was for poor people and all those different things. That was my mindset, okay? But then I had to work with renewing my money mindset and understanding, you know what, through budgeting, through being disciplined with my money, that I can get to where it is that I would like to be. And also to focus on the short term and the long term, because I have a habit of looking at the long term too much, but I also have to remember to look at the short term as well too. But having a financial plan in place that caters to different life stages should be dynamic, and it will help you navigate through life's different financial journeys that you'll have to encounter.
Thank you so much, Melinda. Donna.
Thank you. Hard to come after that because she was saying the things that I was thinking.
They were on your heart, Donna, I know.
So that's there. So if I would say though, because I agree with her, because especially for younger persons, when you're thinking about retirement, that seems very far down the road. And young people will usually ask me, you know, how do I expect them to live now if they start planning for retirement? And I did say earlier, we have limited resources, so we have to work with them. And I agree, you must not live now. In other words, you have to enjoy life now. You really want to be enjoying it at all stages. So then it just becomes a matter of prioritizing. And truthfully, to me, this really only happens when you really do that budgeting, even if, because you have to be able to look at these numbers and make them make sense so that you can start investing now because for later. But you're doing it in small bits. So the later you start, the more challenging it is. And I know it seems challenging to start when you're younger with a lesser income, but really it's almost like a necessary evil, for lack of a better way of saying it. And it works, like Dario initially started by saying, it really works better for you because you give up so much with small amounts that if you had put those in, it really would make a big difference. So my thing is for us to really start that conversation and to encourage each other, because we've walked this path and we know, obviously not all the pitfalls, but some. So to me, start early. And like Melinda said, even with companies' pension plans, there's opportunity to put in voluntary contributions. And once you start, it doesn't mean you have to do it every single year for the next how much ever years. You could actually start it, you could stop it, you could increase it, you could decrease it. There's that voluntary component. So to me, there's systems and mechanisms to kind of help us help ourselves. But we have to know them and be willing to really do something about it to make it happen.
Excellent. And I agree with you. It's the conversation that needs to happen. And Roger, you have added incredibly to the conversation here, always starting with prayer. And I take that, Roger, I take it very seriously. So what would you like your takeaway to be from today's discussion?
And I want to come off of what Donna said. She was talking about company pensions. Company pensions, that becomes the easiest way to make additional money is having a pension plan. The company freely gives you additional money, and that is money you should not walk away from. That is for sure. And when it comes to having a pension plan or anything that you're doing, it is not enough to have a pension plan. It is enough to know how much dollars in terms of numbers. What will this mean for me in terms of, is this $2,000 I will get at 65? Is this $3,000 I will get at 65? You can do something with that. And if it is too short, you can make it up. So when the others were mentioning about knowing the numbers, you want to have an idea of the dollar figure that you will get coming. That is the only way you plan. So that's it for me.
I want to thank our panelists so much. We had an incredibly robust discussion, and to you, the audience, you were incredible with your questions. I know you gave your fellow audience members a lot to think about. And yeah, maybe it's just a matter of going back and knowing the numbers. And if you can't figure them out on your own, because frequently we can't, speak to your advisors, get advice. We've got people like Melinda, we've got people like Roger and Donna. And yeah, talk to people like Dario. These are people who are on the ground and they're always looking for opportunities. We've got to start talking about money, not our money today, but our money tomorrow and beyond. So thank you so much for joining us for Let's Talk. Are you under-pensioned? Don't answer that now. Get to work on it. Once again, a big thank you to Melinda Peter, Dario Greenidge, Donna Gibbs, and Roderick Nurse. We look forward to bringing you more of these. And on behalf of Sagicor, I thank you. I'm Gaynell Marshall. Have a great evening.